Tonight on Free Minds TV, we talk about a possible reauthorization of the Patriot Act. We'll also be talking about the AIG bonus scandal. We'll be getting into new regulations taking place in the European Union, and a whole lot more tonight on Free Minds TV.
And welcome to Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Tobias.
And Nick.
All right, Nick, we've got a full show to get to. I don't know if we're going to be able to get all the content in because, well, there's a lot been happening this week, both on the local level, throughout the world, and in Washington. And that's where we want to start today, in the capital of the United States, where, well, the politicians are always busy at work. And this time, well, they're not creating new legislation, but they're trying to extend some already horribly bad legislation, and that's the Patriot Act, something that people, this whole change thing with Obama, it's all going to be wiped out and gone, and we're going to get our civil liberties back. Well, I think what a lot of people forgot was people in power, they like power, and Obama, once he became president, well, he might like some of those powers that the Patriot Act garnered for him. So will he be getting rid of it? I know that there's news, Nick, you've got the article about possibly re-extending the Patriot Act?
Yep. This is more of an effort in Congress at the moment, so we'll see how Obama reacts to it and whether it even gets out of Congress, because the members that are introducing this reintroduction are Republican members of the House. So I believe that about 10 of them have signed on so far, and they want to extend the Patriot Act for an additional 10 years. So this would extend programs, or at least they're extending certain provisions of it. So this would extend things like roving wiretaps, basically warrantless wiretaps, and it would also allow law enforcement to have access to library patron information. One of the more controversial parts of the Patriot Act, don't have any information that actually stopped any terrorist attacks, and it was probably considered one of the most privacy-invading aspects of the Patriot Act. Well, they'd like to see that renewed. The claim here is that the Patriot Act provisions are effective at preventing terrorism and that the threat of terrorism hasn't diminished. Now, I'll agree that the threat of terrorism probably hasn't significantly diminished, but
it never will.
It never will.
And so are we to be having this Patriot Act our entire lives? I mean, we've heard the politicians say that we're always going to be involved in these conflicts. We're never going to be safe from the terrorist. This isn't a 1 or 2 or 3 or 10-year war. This is a war that Americans are going to be fighting for a lifetime. So we're pretty much giving up our civil liberties because there might be a boogeyman in the closet. Now, these laws, this Patriot Act, these laws, I don't find them that they're making any of us safer. What they're doing is they're collecting massive amounts of data on all the people, not only in the United States, but all over the world, gathering all this data. And there's so much of it that they don't know what to do with it. It's, in fact, watering down the real terror suspects out there because you're collecting data on people like me. I mean, how many of these shows are people watching and creating files on you and myself, Nick? Because, we've got to be safe. We've got to collect all this data. Does all this data mining make us any safer? I'd argue that it's just watering down the real reports of possible terror out there.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that the United States didn't have significant numbers of terrorist attacks for decades prior to these pieces of legislation like the Patriot Act. They simply got warrants when they suspected somebody of plotting a terrorist attack or doing something illegal. Now, granted, even before the Patriot Act was passed, there were a lot of abuses that took place. But by and large, law enforcement would simply get warrants or whatever they needed to get to investigate people in a constitutional way. It's not that difficult to do. What this allows them to do is spy on anybody without any kind of evidence. They don't even have to be able to articulate why they're interested in you.
Fourth Amendment be gone. Give up all your freedoms and liberties and we'll protect you because we're the government and we're here to help you. Personally, I'd say protect me by getting off my lawn, staying out of my business, and moving on with your own lives. I mean, fix what's going on in Washington before you're ready to protect me, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. All right, Nick, moving right along, one thing that the people in Washington did was screw up this whole AIG bailout thing, and now there's all this controversy because a percentage of the billions upon billions and upon billions of dollars is going to bonuses for the very people who created the mess in the first place. And this is taxpayer money, your money, my money that comes out of our paycheck, is going to fund millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of bonuses for the same people who created the mess in the first place. Nick, what's the latest?
Well, it is a big media story. It has been this week. People are angry, apparently about $165 million in bonuses that AIG already had contracts to pay out. Now, I think people are right to be angry that their tax money is essentially going to pay for executive bonuses.
Now, who are people angry at, though? Because I think that's an important piece, because these AIG people, they already had contracts for these bonuses, and if AIG, the company, pulled through, they get to be paid. Who I'd be angry at is the government officials who gave them the money and said, yeah, it's okay. You can have the money plus your bonuses too. Is the rage directed at the right people?
Not really. At least it seems like politicians in Washington, both in the administration and in Congress, they're trying to direct the people's anger at these bonuses, which are a tiny fraction of the total bailout package. And it might not be a coincidence that last weekend, the list of banks that received money, some of this bailout money from AIG, a good chunk of it actually was just paid out to other banks that were counterparties to these investments with AIG. They just released that list, and all of a sudden they're angry about these bonuses. It might be that they're trying to distract the American people from the fact that $100 billion of taxpayer money was essentially wasted. They just divvied it out to other banks. It didn't go back into lending or anything like that. So it was just guaranteeing the profits of big banks, like some of the ones that were counterparties were Citigroup, which also received bailout money, if I remember correctly, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and a whole bunch more. A lot of them were foreign banks too, so it wasn't like it was just propping up the US financial system or anything like that. So it's a distraction, and I think what people need to focus on is the fact that bailouts are the problem.
Right.
You're essentially our money, your money, my tax money, it's being taken from us and used to shore up profits of companies like AIG or General Motors.
We're talking about millions of dollars here, and while that is a lot of money,
well, we're talking about trillions of dollars here.
Okay, but we're talking about these bonuses. We're talking about $100 and something million. Well, when you're looking at the bigger picture, this is what people really need to look at. 1 million times 1 million equals $1 trillion, and we've done far more than that. We've done way more than $1 trillion worth of these bailouts. That's what you should be outraged about. Now, I mean, yes, it's horrible that they're giving these bonuses to these people. That's the same governmental people that are okay with giving trillions of dollars to other people. I mean, this is your money. This is my money being taken from our paychecks. This isn't where I want my money going. It makes no sense. So yes, Nick, I agree with you that this is just a lot of distractions to take away from the real point that we're giving away millions times millions of dollars.
Yeah, and you also have to remember that when the government's doing these bailouts, besides the fact that they're taking money from you and you don't have a choice about that, and they're spending it on these companies to prop them up, so essentially you're subsidizing large corporations, the government's also picking the winners and the losers. They'll let certain companies fail. Companies that are actually doing well enough to squeak by on their own aren't taking the government money, but what's their incentive to run their company in a responsible way?
Yeah, I guess the incentive is to do horribly, and then the government will give you a few $1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, Ford isn't lining up for assistance money from the government. GM, however, is. What's Ford like? Ford ran their company in a better way than GM, but they don't get anything for that. If you're a shareholder in Ford, the government is essentially propping up a company that's going to take away market share from Ford. So,
and meanwhile, you have less money in your wallet, I have less money in my wallet, and business owners who are hiring people have a whole lot less money in their wallets. So how are businesses supposed to survive when the government's taking money away from individuals who are trying to be productive members of the workforce and taking away money from businesses that are simply trying to hire employees and make a product or provide a service? How are those companies supposed to survive when their profits of their businesses that are doing well are being taken away and squandered on companies that don't know how to run their businesses? Is that supposed to help the economy? I mean, how brain dead do you need to be to think that if you just keep throwing money at a problem and it doesn't work, if you throw more money at it, it's going to work this time? It's creating a bigger and bigger bubble that eventually will pop and prolong the matter even worse. These government interventions, they're not going to fix the problem. They're going to prolong the problem. And then eventually, when the government finally runs out of money, we can hit rock bottom and the economy can start to grow again. But until the government starts to butt out, it's you and I who are going to suffer for it.
Yeah, and it might take a long time, unfortunately. It doesn't seem like the government's going to get out of bailing out companies.
Well, they'll run out of
soon.
money eventually. I mean, credit lines run out. They'll
Yeah.
print the money, and then your money will be worth less, my money will be worth less. Then hopefully people will get outraged. The question is, will it be at the right people, though? Will it be directed at the government officials, the elected representatives that are here to represent you and I? Will it be directed at them? Because they're the ones creating all this problem. And I think that's very important to understand, that those are the people who are creating the problems. The people that you voted for, or maybe you didn't vote for, but the people who are representing you in Washington. Those are the people that right now, if there's a time to march on Washington with pitchforks and torches, it seems like this would be the point. I mean, trillions of dollars being robbed from your pocket just to pay for these bailouts, it makes no sense to me. But if you have a different opinion, we'd love to hear here at FMTV at freemindstv.com is the email address. Let us know what you think. Agree with us, disagree with us. We'd love to hear from you.
And there are a lot of people who do agree with us on this one. In Cincinnati, in fact, this is just one place across the country where this has been taking place. But several thousand people, I don't know the exact count, gathered in the center of town in Cincinnati to protest bailout packages and what they view as excessive government spending. Now, it was called the Cincinnati Tea Party as a reference to the Boston Tea Party, and a lot of people are angry about the fact that the government is taking their money and using it either to bail out irresponsible businesses or people who didn't make good decisions with their own personal finances. And these people are angry at the right people. That would be Washington. Now, some people might argue these people weren't that opposed to the bailouts when it was George Bush doing it. Now they're opposed to higher taxes and higher spending because it's Barack Obama doing it. That may well be true for some of them, but at least they're opposing government spending. So they're on our side regardless of their reasoning. And some of them are commenting on the fact that they're concerned that the money you have this year will be worth half as much as next year.
So as if all this bailout doesn't work. Because if it works, all the money that's being printed out, the trillion dollars that was pumped into the economy, pretty much printed or borrowed or putting new money into the economy, that would make us all worthless. The theory is if it works perfectly and the economy recovers, the Fed's going to suck in that $1 trillion that they just injected in, which is more than 10% of the money that's circulating right now that they injected in. If it all works and it's propped back up, they'll suck it right back out, and the economy will be all beautiful. People will be happy. Their money will be worth more. But do you see that happening? Because I certainly do.
I can see one of two things happening. One is that they don't find a way to increase interest rates and or however they're going to try to pull this money back out of circulation, so we get very rampant inflation. The other alternative I see is that they do ratchet down on inflation. They do raise interest rates significantly like they did in the 70s. And essentially they stunt growth and throw us right back into another recession once the recovery has started. It's not a good idea to have a central bank trying to manipulate the economy because they tend to overshoot with the amount of capital they're injecting, and then they'll overshoot in the other direction when they're trying to pull capital back out of the markets. So it's not a good news either way you look at it. Well, I don't expect it to work.
Well, Nick, personally at this point, I think that we might be a whole lot better off with the federal government. I think they do much more harm than good.
Without them.
Without them, yeah. Let's get rid of them. I think we'd do much better off if they were just completely gone and we could let state governments interact on their own. I mean, the federal government's supposed to get its power from the states, but it seems that over the years, things have started to work out differently, and the federal government seems to think that it gives the states its power. Personally, I say, let's get rid of them, see what the states can do. I mean, if your state wants to bail people out, move there. Personally, I'd like to live in a state where people can keep the money in their wallets. If you want to go live in socialism, you can move to Massachusetts or California or something. If you want to live in a free society, maybe move to New Hampshire or something like that. I like that idea. But some people have a different opinion. Some people still think there's hope in Washington, and that's why we like to at least bring it to their attention, some bad bills with the Downsizer Dispatch. What's this week?
Well, this week I'm not going to focus on a particular campaign or piece of legislation that they're focusing on with the Downsizer Dispatch. What I am going to tell people to do is, if you've heard this message before from us, you've been watching the show for a while, and you have gone and signed up for Downsize DC, or you've gone there and checked it out and you like it, tell a friend, tell a family member about what Downsize DC is trying to do and what they're trying to fight against. I mean, inform people that that Congress doesn't actually read most of the bills it signs. In many cases, federal laws that we're required to follow, rules and regulations, they're not passed by Congress. Unelected bureaucrats arbitrarily create these rules or rescind the rules. Let people know that, because I think a lot of Americans just don't realize that that is the way that the laws that they're supposed to follow are generated, and you really don't have very much of a say, even if your representatives are passing the laws. But at the very least, maybe they should read the bills and then vote them into law, and nobody else besides Congress should be creating new laws. At least we can keep track of what bills are coming in and out of Congress, as opposed to all of these bureaucracies creating laws. DownsizeDC.org.
Yeah, if nothing else, we can at least try to slow them down until we get some kind of a more sensible.
Slowing them down would be good.
Yeah, until we come up with something a little bit more sensible.
Or even just an even pace would be better than the way it's been going. It seems like the amount of legislation being passed is sort of
you can't
an
even read it all.
exponential curve.
I mean, if you started reading it, you'd never have the time. Right? So a Read the Bills Act would obviously at least stall them because, well, they'd have to read the bills, and you can't do that with the allotted time they have now. So downsizedc.org if you think there's still hope. I mean, I email them, even though I've lost hope, but I want those politicians to know I'm upset with them. All right, when we come back, we're going to go across the pond over to Europe. We're going to pick on them for a while there. You know, the European Union, well, things could be worse here in America. At least we're not having to deal with a whole union. Not yet, at least. We'll be coming back. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Free Minds TV is brought to you by freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by Life Productions for your basic and semi-pro video production needs. From full wedding and event coverage to DVD authoring and distributions. LifeProductions.com, that's LYFProductions.com.
Hey, Ridley Report, Ridley here from RidleyReport.com, RidleyReport.com, Ridleyography, I am the bomb. And I just want to tell you, you're watching FreeMindsTV.com, and they're like really cool, so you should keep watching them. FreeMindsTV.com, they are good.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It's Toby here with you.
And Nick.
All right, Nick, I want to move away from the United States for a little bit. We have viewers and listeners to this show over in Europe, and their laws are oftentimes a little bit worse than ours. I mean, as you said during the break there, you did point out that we do have a union. The federal government is the union for the states. I almost forget sometimes since they've grown so big.
What you were referring to is the idea of maybe a North American union or
Canada, Mexico, America, all have
like
an umbrella government.
South America has essentially created the beginnings of a South American union, so we have one right next door. It's not that far out of the realm of possibility.
Well, in Europe, they have it. It's thriving. Oh, well, I don't know if thriving would be the proper word for this, but they definitely have a European Union, and they're hard at work creating all sorts of asinine laws. The first one, we've got a couple of them for you. Euro chiefs ban Miss and Mrs. Yes, the terms Miss and Mrs. as well as a whole lot of other names have been banned from statespeople. You call them statespeople now, not statesmen or political leaders or whatnot. It's been banned from the use of anyone who's involved in the union or any of the member governments that are involved in the union.
So this is for business people, or it's just for the government?
This is for the government people. So this is a rule the government people have to follow, but it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, it's almost humorous to think that there are people out there spending their days writing laws having to do with this. The politically correct rules mean that continental titles such as Madame and Mademoiselle, other languages that use these gender non-neutral terms, they have to be banned. Officials have also ordered that sportsmen be called athletes, statesmen be referred to as political leaders, and synthetic or artificial be used in place of man-made. We can't have that anymore. We got to use synthetic. Man-made, it's just not nice. What if female MPs get all upset? The term Mr. is still okay. I don't know why that's okay. They have a whole.
So it's okay to call somebody a guy, but not to call him a girl.
Yeah, they have a whole guide book. The gender neutral language pamphlet is what it's called. Someone spent tax dollars putting this booklet together. Who knows how long they were in their dark, depressing, sad basement putting this together at the taxpayers' expense. But, you know, things could always be worse. I mean, the politically correctness is creeping over here, but at least not at the same pace that it's going on in Europe.
Unfortunately, a lot of people in the United States, a lot of politicians look to the European Union and other countries, to the laws they're passing for inspiration. So oftentimes when you see horrible measures implemented, whether it's in the UK or in continental Europe, they tend to trickle over to the United States. I know that public surveillance cameras, at one time it seemed very unlikely that the kind of surveillance system that they have in the United Kingdom would come over here to the United States. But now we see many major cities like New York have a pretty substantial grid to observe you from. They have thousands of cameras up all over the city, and lost my train of thought. Basically, you can...
One of our crew members just mooned us, by the way. I'd just like to point that out. Anyways, moving right along. Do you have your train of thought back yet?
I don't.
All right, well, we'll move right along to another ridiculous thing that happened over in the European Union, and this one having to do with train spotting. I had to look this term up because I was pretty sure what it meant. It meant people who like to go around and spot trains, journal about trains, take some pictures of them because, you know, they're train enthusiasts. But I did look the term up. The first definition is what I just stated. The second definition, I guess, is a boring person. Apparently people think that it's boring to watch trains, but the government in Europe, or at least the European Union, doesn't seem to think so. They think that these people are dangerous, and they have in fact started banning train spotters from doing what they do, which is observing trains, sometimes photographing them, and even journaling about these trains. The European Union says that the National Express will bar spotters from stations on the East Coast main lines because they are a nuisance and pose a security risk. They're also urging other rail lines to do the same before they mandate it. So, Nick, is it really that dangerous to watch trains? Have there been issues with people, hobbyists going out watching trains?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I think it's just part of the larger crackdown that's taking place on people photographing anything that could potentially be the subject of a terrorist attack. I mean, we saw it in the United Kingdom where they outlawed taking photos of any police or military personnel. We've seen it in the United States. I mean, we might not have seen that many laws passed about it, but law enforcement officials will sometimes get a little bit nervous and ask you some questions if you're taking photographs of a bridge or something like that. And some jurisdictions, I think New York City included, we just mentioned them earlier, I think they have certain laws against videotaping without a permit because they're concerned that terrorists are going to use it to plot an attack. But
you can't just look that up on the internet. There's not already pictures of trains on there, and there's not already pictures of skyscrapers and stuff. You can just look that stuff up.
They could just go there and get on the train
and
look at the station. I mean, they're going to know what the station looks like.
But if they bring it home, that's when it's dangerous. You know, these laws, they say that they're meant to try to keep us safe, but what they're really doing is, well, they're making sure that we're good little people and we're obeying their rules. Well, it seems to me it's all about power. Take away one hobbyist's dream and you gained yourself a little bit of power. I don't like train spotting, but I like to defend the rights of people who do. All right, moving right along, let's bring it back here to the United States because, you know, well, we're not angels over here as well. We've got our bad laws, we've got our bad politicians, and we have our bad police officers. This article coming from Michigan where a cop, an unnamed cop, because they won't release his name, shot an unarmed 20-year-old who was also a marijuana activist. Now, they were serving a warrant on this young man's house. It's not clear why. The article doesn't state why, but it does hint that he had posted quite a few YouTube videos promoting the legalization of marijuana. He was an activist. He thought that these laws should be changed. It doesn't say if that's what sparked the warrant, but what happened is the police came through the back door. They shone a light in his eyes. He put his hand up to cover the flashlight on his face, and the cop decided to open fire and shot him in the chest. He's in critical condition in the hospital, and who knows? I mean, is he going to survive? We don't know. And why did this happen? Because of the insane war on drugs. This guy's just a marijuana activist, wants to get political. Is there something wrong with that? Can you get shot now for having a political opinion? Or do you have to live in fear that your house is going to be raided? Is your house going to be raided tomorrow because we have certain political views that we talk about? I mean, are we breaking any laws by talking about these political views? Some would argue that we are. Some would argue that we should be shut down and we should no longer be able to talk about
Some
this.
people would argue a lot of things. The fact of the matter is, no. I mean, a political opinion is something you're entitled to, and it's not really a basis for a warrant. Some judges will issue it, though. I mean, that's the problem if the courts don't see it your way, and if the police don't like you, if they want to make something up, they're pretty much free to do that.
Yeah, well, right now this officer is on paid administrative leave.
Paid vacation.
Yeah, paid vacation, pending the investigation. So we'll see what comes of this. I'm sure he's not going to be charged with anything because, hand to the face. That's dangerous. Got to open fire with deadly force. Isn't that what tasers are for? I mean, we're told that tasers are supposed to be the non-lethal force that's used if all other options are exhausted. This would have been, I don't think a taser would have been appropriate here either, but at least before a gunshot to the chest.
Yeah. I don't really see how...
It's not like he was even holding a wallet or something.
Well, he was holding his hand up by his face. It's not where you hold a gun.
How can you hold something? Yeah, you're going to shoot yourself in the face? Anyways, it's ridiculous. And what it comes down to is this insane war on drugs we have. But we could talk about that for hours. We've done so on many shows. But for now, let's move on. I just wanted to brush on this one real quick. This coming from Georgia. We've talked about sex offender laws before and how they sometimes, they're targeting the wrong people. Georgia has some of the most strict laws on sex offenders, and they've expanded them to cover a lot of people who, they just don't deserve to be on the list because they have committed no offense that could in any person's regard be viewed as sexual. They decide that if you're committing a crime that involves children, people under the age of 18 is what they call children. If you're committing a crime and they're involved in it, you could be put on the sex offender registry. The one article that this article is talking about, the one case, is a 17-year-old Danville Harvey, who in his younger days he took part in an armed robbery. He decided to bring a gun into a Dairy Queen and hold the place up, demanding their money. Is this a good thing? Absolutely not. But listen to this. Since the teller clerk was 16 years old at the time, he was charged with holding him under false arrest. So he's not allowed to arrest people, and he was charged with that. And since the guy is under 18, he's being charged as a sex offender and now is having to register as such. Now, does this help parents who are out there trying to figure out where the predator lurks, who's going to be doing something bad to their children? Absolutely not. It doesn't do any of that because this guy, he doesn't want to touch kids. So how is he being a sex offender when he had it just doesn't make sense. His motive was to go and steal some money. It had absolutely nothing to do with anything sexual. But now he gets to go and knock on everybody's door and say he's a sex offender. He's already gone and done his jail sentence, and here in America, if you're rehabilitated, you're supposed to have a second chance. But this guy, apparently, he doesn't. He's having to go and explain himself. He says he's turned his life around since then. He's 36 now, so this happened a number of years ago when he was 17. And now he's having to go and explain himself everywhere he goes as a sex offender when all he did was, it's not anything good. It's horrible. Any kind of a violent crime, especially one involving a gun and robbery, that's wrong.
He was already charged.
But he was charged, he served his sentence, and now he's on the sex offender registry. It's once again watering down.
It also just doesn't make any sense.
These are the laws that representatives, they'll throw at you every day. That's why they don't represent me. Nick, we're out of time. We're going to have to talk more later. I wish we had another half hour, but we just don't. So you're going to have to log on to our website, freemindstv.com, for more. Tune on to our radio shows Sundays from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's live, so make sure you tune in. And everything else. We have a new website on the way, as well as a new set. We have plants today, but more is coming soon. So stay tuned. This has been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Have a great night. We're out of time. Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by anarchyinyourhead.com, a comic about freedom. When it comes to politics, they hate just about everyone, so they're bound to make fun of someone that you don't like eventually. Anarchyinyourhead.com, that's anarchyinyourhead.com.